All right, so tuning broadheads. This is a very hot topic. I have tuned a lot of bows with broadheads. So let's say, and you kind of have to think of it in paper tuning terms. So let's say I'm shooting my field points, they're right in the middle, and then I screw my broadhead on, and I'm 4 inches left at 20 yards. With a fixed blade head, or pretty much any head, what that's indicating is that at some point my arrow is kicking tail right and point left, and those blades are catching wind and planing in that direction. If you were to correct a tail, so a lot of people will use their rest to change their broadhead point of impact. If I'm going to move my rest to correct a tail right tear through paper, you move it to the left. So if I'm impacting left of my field point, I'm actually going to move my rest towards the impact of the broadhead. Now, there's a lot of information online that says move it opposite. And now if I move my rest to the right, it might bring the broadhead over to the right a little bit, but the field point's also going to move to the right. My goal is to get my broadhead and my field point hitting together. If all I want to do is my broadhead hit the middle, I'll just move my sight so my broadhead's in the middle and my field point's to the right. There are cases, and I usually see this in long draw lengths with a cable-driven rest, where it gets worse moving it towards the broadhead. So it's not an exact science, but generally speaking, for your horizontal difference in impact, you're going to micro your rest towards your broadhead. Now, if you're a foot left or a foot right, then something else is going on. You're not going to be able to move your rest far enough. You're going to have to go get your bow tuned, re-paper tuned with the field point, and kind of start from ground zero. But if you're within 3 or 4 inches at 20 yards, you can micro that rest, and it doesn't take a lot to change that broadhead flight. And so generally what I'll see, so let's say I'm 4 inches left at 20 yards. I move my rest, an eighth of an inch to the left, and I shoot again. What you'll most likely see is your field point of impact is going to move to the left, but your broadhead point of impact is going to move to the right. And then once they're together, then I just move my sight so that they're both in the middle. Now, like I said, with mechanicals, you're probably not going to see an issue with this. You will, the more blades and higher profile the broadhead is, the more sensitive it is to any, mishaps in arrow flight, essentially. So if your vertical difference in impact, you're actually going to move your rest opposite the broadhead. So just like paper tuning, if I'm tail high, I bring the rest up. A tail high tear through paper will cause a low point of impact because, again, those blades point down and they plane low. So I bring the rest up. If I'm hitting high, I need to bring the tip of that arrow down a little bit, so I move the rest down. Now, why it affects the back of the arrow on your horizontal adjustment and the front of the arrow on the vertical, I'm not an engineer, I'm not a physicist. I've always wondered that question. I just know what works because I've done this probably 5,000 times over the last 12 years. And, that might be an exaggeration, but I've tuned a lot of bows with broadheads. And I would say probably 98% of them, you move the rest towards the broadhead for your horizontal impact and opposite for your opposite the broadhead for your vertical impact. So if you're at home and you got a set of Allen wrenches, I would make sure if you start moving that rest, take a picture with your phone of where most rests have little laser engraved marks. Take a picture of where it was or mark it with a silver Sharpie so that if it gets worse, you can get back to zero where you started and go the opposite direction. And that kind of is a good point with archery. It's like there are times where what's supposed to work doesn't. And if things get worse, do the opposite and see if it gets better. But that is your kind of Reader's Digest version of broadhead tuning. So with season coming up, a lot of people are starting to shoot broadheads, getting things tuned up. And if you're, like I said, if you have those little minor differences in your point of impact, you can make little tweaks to your rest and hopefully bring that broadhead and those field points together so that you can just, in camp, you can shoot your field points and hit what you're aiming at, and then go out and shoot your broadhead and, hit what you're aiming at with your broadhead. If you're hunting, like here, our hunting season starts basically in September for elk and deer. I personally don't really mess with broadheads until like a week before season. I'll go out and make sure everything's good, because if I come and, like, if you're a customer, you come into the shop and we spend 45 minutes getting your bow all tuned, shooting broadheads great in June, and then you shoot all summer, most likely that bow's going to come out of tune by the time season hits. Now, if you're shooting your broadheads all the time, you'll see it, because all of a sudden your broadheads will not be hitting with your field points. But if you just shoot your field points thinking, I've got my bow tuned for broadheads, and you shoot, 1,500 arrows between June and September or more, and then you just screw your broadheads on and go out hunting, you're probably not going to be hitting in the same spot with your broadheads. So, you don't want to, obviously you want to shoot them and give yourself some time. I'm guilty of doing this a lot of times, literally like the night before season. But I would say, if you get it tuned in a week or two before season and you're not shooting at 300 arrows a day, most likely your bow is going to stay in tune. But I do always check my broadheads before I go out. Most people now will bring like a little block broadhead target to camp. And even after, walking around for a few days, maybe your strings get soaking wet and then the bow's sitting in the sun for a while and all that. Like all that stuff can cause string stretch, which will cause your bow to come out of tune. It's not going to be a major difference, but you might go back to camp and start shooting and think, why is everything 3 inches low left? In that scenario, you could move your rest. Most likely, if it's that small, I'm just going to move my sight. I'm not going to start tweaking stuff out in the field, because if I get to a point where I can't get it back, you're going to have worse results than just moving your sight. So anyway, thanks for watching again. Remember, hunt hard and be kind. We'll see you next time.